Hi, my name is Mike Clevin. I go by the Unprofessor, and in blog space, I'm often been known as Skookum1. You'll also find me there in Wikipedia and the Canadian Mountain Encyclopedia, and I can't remember everywhere else, the Tyee and the Georgia Strait sometimes, although I'm Mike Clevin also. Anyway, I'm not want to talk about myself. I'm doing a history video right now. I'm trying to not talk about Canadian politics. And although I'm very interested in Velikovsky and electrics and what it means about Heraclitus and other things I know about the ancient world, it is the ancient world I'll talk about, I think partly as escapism. Indeed. That I'm going to look to, the reason I'm interested in the ancient histories so much is I'm trying to, the same way I came down out of the mountains to try and figure out tourism and what it could do for where I was from, I came down to try and figure out civilization and where it came from. So now I'm getting a really good handle on it because of all the things I've been watching and all the things I'm willing to consider that are now making a whole lot of sense. All the ancient mythologies have the same common story, and that's the one piece of subjective evidence that we have within our oral record, and it has to be respected and understood that it actually did happen, and this is the Velikovskian point of view. But no, this is about a video. I could talk about that endlessly. Whether it pertains to what I'm talking about, I don't know. We'll see. Because I've been watching the video that says the year civilization ended 1177 BC. And as I've said in other videos, there's this Western perspective that prevents the proper view of everything. So he was right in talking about there being like a Bronze Age G8, Egypt, the Hittites, the Mitanni, and so on, He said he didn't get into the full list. But I knew, China existed then. He had got as far as east as India, and, well, India and China were in contact then. You see, like everything was in contact, even though you may not have known it. That somebody in the far end of Italy wouldn't have known about China, but somebody in between, everybody's somewhere along the way. This is why India was part of Middle Eastern history, but it's always left off the map, like it is on that one. Even India, which Europe has been in contact with since the time of Alexander. Or before. Well, Darius was. The Persian Empire, which was, polyglot, very tolerant empire under Cyrus the Great, and then under Darius, once power was restored after the usurper. Anyways, in 1177 BC, the events that they get into talking about in that video, which I've watched before, they get into Thira, and it's all about the Sea Peoples and who the Sea Peoples were. Well, there's a lot more I've seen on that since, and there's a one I saw, a vlog or video from a guy from one of the Israeli universities who had traced the story of is it the 7 or the 10 plagues? It's been years since I've looked at at Exodus. That afflicted Egypt, including an explanation for the death of all the firstborn, which was very good. I thought it made a lot of sense. Anyways, and the escape over the Black Sea, and that it was supposedly related to Thira, but they also had them that they were the Hyksos, they were the Sea Peoples, and that they had a capital when they ruled Egypt on one of the eastern branches of the Nile, whose name I should have memorized, but I haven't. It's a great capital like Luxor, except it's totally gone. It was built out of sand or mud or whatever they built in, or else they've never excavated it. There's a lot in Egypt that there's no money to excavate. And the same is true in Iraq. My late original humanities professor, Richard Sullivan, Dick Sullivan, he taught in prisons. He taught classics in prisons for guys coping with their problems, teach the tragedies and stuff. But yeah, he was a really cool guy, and he had digs. He had the necropolis at Alexandria. I can't remember what it's called. Heraklion? No. Yeah, I guess it's Heraklion. And he said our class was going on during the Iran-Iraq war, and he said he was losing 100 dig sites a day. No, that he'd lost 100 dig sites in the course of the war. So there'd be even more lost in the Gulf Wars. George Bush first, George Bush the second, and the intermediate carpet bombing by Clinton, and all the time that the great liberal progressive Clinton with the smile that could play snacks and be so charming, just like Mulroney. They're all showbiz politicians. These people not see it. They've been showbiz since ancient times. That's what kingship is. Put on a show. Make some enemies. Make some friends. old big weddings, old big wars. That's what politics is. Anyway, 1177. So I've watched other things since about the date of that and when that happened. And it's been more dated now, not to the reign of Ramses III as this video I'm watching, the end of the year civilization ended 1177 BC says. No. It turns out that it's during I think it's Ahtmose the third or Ahtmose maybe the third, or Ahtmose the second, something back 1700 BC. Okay. And then there's this other matter about the Israeli University video I mentioned. You know, they had the usual Mount Sinai rationalization and this other place up towards the actual Israeli border that they claim was the location, but it's just not the location, because I've seen the Jebel al-Las thing in Saudi Arabia, and that there are wagon wheels on the bottom of the Gulf of Aqaba. It's very convincing evidence. I'm sorry, this other side that still says it went this way and never crossed the Gulf. I don't know. We've got the evidence. Okay, somehow it happened, and maybe this all had to do with the magnetics, like the appearance of the bridge. You know, some kind of warp effect that accompanied the eruption of Thira. Now, Thira did definitely cause the red rain and the plague of frogs and whatever else, all the other plagues of Egypt. They're definitely the locusts. All of it would have been caused by the eruption. But the wave, you know, and the wave which would have destroyed the Argolith, which was where Mekine was, that makes this a little different, because the Hyksos are said to have gone there, some of them. But the Hyksos weren't just the Israelis. They weren't just the Hebrews. But the Hebrews, yeah, were, you know, if you look at the Kolbrin, the Hebrews have a different role in Egyptian history, that they were, you know, Moses was an adopted person in the royal family and an honored prince and powerful man, you know, and a lot of them were powerful. But the Hyksos, they had this capital on the East Nile, and they chose to leave, you know. And then I guess maybe at the same time as eruption, or because of the eruption, or maybe Moses knew about the eruption. I don't know. All I know is putting the stories together, right? But apparently it's 1700. But also the Western perspective of it, you know, it would have been good if he'd gone and looked at the Asian records, you know. But, well, no, Thira wouldn't have affected Asia all that much, except for darkening the world for, yeah, it caused a dark age after the eruption of Thira, of course. You know, and I've been to Akrotiri on Santorini, and it was evacuated before it was buried by ash. But when that island blew, what was on it, who knows? Who knows? It was forgotten. And then, no, it's not Atlantis, I don't think. Atlantis was something else. Atlantis was 10,000 years before. As Plato says, and as the Egyptians say, we have to take things at face value and start listening to them at face value, because that's what these Velikovsky videos do, and a lot of other ancient history videos do. But people get all weird, kind of, you know, space aliens and stuff about it. No, it's simpler than that. You know, that we were really different. The world was really different. And when the seas came up, the history of our past is under the oceans, my friends. The history of our past is below the seas. Some will be hidden in the hills. Some things, even 10,000 years old, still stand. I didn't know about Tel Carmel until yesterday, and Tel Harmoka. I guess they're both in Syria. Tel Carmel, I know, is northern Syria somewhere. I'm going to have to look on the map and say Mary Serrani said. So this is also the area of Punic civilization. This is the other thing that twigged me about that 1177 date that this guy comes up with. Because after that, it was what did he say? It was 30 years the world was in dark age. It took 300 years for the world to get back on its feet. And out of that arose, you know, the archaic period in Greece, and then the classical era eventually by 400, 500. And, you know, the Trojan War, did it happen? Of course it did, you know. But the whole thing about the Trojan War is that the Romanians say that the Troy they were Thracians, they spoke that same language. They spoke their language. And that Aeneas, who went to Carthage, was founded around 1200 BC. As far as I know, I think so. Would have been founded just after this. You know, the Punics, who had been devastated, the Phoenician coast would have been devastated by a wave and ash fall, and all the cities of Iran and Tyre and Sidon and all Baalbek, all of those. Well, Baalbek didn't exist yet, or Proto-Baalbek did, whatever it was called. You know, that has the big stones, you know. That was all devastated, right? So all the Phoenicians all around the rest of the Mediterranean went, and they found the best place they knew of, which was, you know, where Tunis is today, is the site of Carthage. destroyed utterly by the Romans, including all this great library, but all this art and, a lot of what you think is Roman culture is Carthaginian, but they didn't have the state institution or a god emperor. They were just really efficient. Were they capitalists or traders? They were kind of internationalists, I guess. And, they were in touch with the British Isles, the Scandinavians. They were in touch with the Canaries. They must have been in touch with the New World. Anybody who says they're not is just somebody who says, it's so obvious. Anyway, so Carthage came out of this foundation of the post-devastation, as did, the rise of David and Solomon in Israel, in the kingdom of Israel for its brief existence until wiped out by whomever next, because it got wiped out a few times, right? And the dispersal of the 10 tribes, and they were along the road into Asia, which is why, Issa Yosef ben Mariam, one called Yeshua, the Nazarene. That's why he went east, because he was gone. He'd been told when he was young by the Magi, they must have come back and taught him or got him and took him back along the road through across Persia, through Bactria, where there's traces of Khazari communities and, traces, they say they're Jewish, and the same in China, the Kaifeng Jews, and Manichaean Christianity was all the way in southern, the world was much more interconnected than the common popular conception of the separated cultures. And this is what we have to be in the modern age, all us people looking at ancient history and ancient science and trying to make sense of it all. And this is all about our own modern politics. Like I say, this is escapism on my part, a bit, except it's the machinations of power. I'm here on the fringes of the empire, where the land is being taken from the people outside the empire by armed force without legal justification, and just lies and lies and lies. It's the Roman system. We are still Roman civilization, the Roman way of doing things. Divide and conquer. Just ignore other people's laws, impose your own. This is the Canadian Empire. The Dominion. The Dominion. Like in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where you don't know who anybody is and what they're really up to? Yeah, the Dominion. This is the Dominion of Canada, the term that was invented to not offend the Americans by saying the Kingdom of Canada, when it was devolved from being a colony, the colony of Canada. Anyways, so ancient history is more important than most people think, because it's how we became who we are, and the political institutions and the ways of doing things, but also the mentality of erasing the history of others in order to assert your own view of it. And this is our modern media do this all the time. Left, right, progressive, center, they all do it. And maybe that's what I'm trying to do, but what I'm really trying to do is open your eyes to all the scope of history and where we are and what's up with this world we live in. And what's up with my own country, This is partly because I'm looking at ancient history to understand human behavior with politics. Geopolitics is the relationship of politics to space, and political geography is a little bit different. Of space to politics. It's the other way around. It's for a Canadian right now, tonight, I don't want to talk about the Wet'suwet'en War. I don't want to talk about the unconstitutionality of British Columbia, quite frankly. Well, maybe I will at the end of this, because I want anybody who's listening internationally to understand where I'm from. I'm in a colony. I'm in somewhere where native rights were set aside and never acknowledged, but then overridden, and the land and the gold and everything taken, and they've had horrible things done to them. And yeah, it's hard to be a Canadian right now, but this is why I'm looking at all the ancient past, right? Part the escapism. It's fascinating too, especially the Velikovsky and electric stuff, which ties right in with Nikola Tesla. It ties right in with a philosopher named Heraclitus, and it makes me want to go look at Parmenides again and think about what he said. He's another great Greek philosopher. And I do have to go look at Pythagoras and find out what else I can about, now this new Tel Carmel, 10,000-year-old city with 10 towers. Okay. Wow. What was that? Right? And there's this thing called the Temple of the Seven Planets, and the Temple of the Moon God Sin, which until the Mongols destroyed it, had this crystal thing on the top that's kind of sent out rainbow colors and stuff could be seen from miles. This all happened only like 1,000 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. There were wonders in this world that were destroyed by the Christians, and also between the wars between the Christians. You know, Rocamadour was hacked to pieces by a Huguenot captain, you know, a French Protestant, as a work of the devil. It was like a body in samadhi that was still warm and living, although asleep, for ever since it had been found in a cave in southern France. The Rocamadour, you know, it's an amazing story, you know. And there's other things like the great statue of Zeus, one of the wonders of the ancient world. It lasted until 1204, when the French and the Venetians, I think it was the Venetians who burned it. It used to sit in the garden of a palace eunuch of the Byzantine Empire. The eunuchs were like really powerful people, and he retrieved it from Olympia when Olympia was deconditioned by Theodosius II. This has me wonder what happened to the Athena that was in the Parthenon, because it was another living ivory, gold, looked like lifelike. So lifelike it would speak to you, but that's also the frankincense doing its magic on you. Anyways, and yet people didn't doubt, people didn't start questioning until Socrates came along, and he broke the ancient mind. Julian James's book is really interesting to read. I'll try and remember to link it in a comment. But so this 1177, 1700, you know, for the Hyksos story, and Thira, the real Thira timing. Ahtmose is the pharaoh, I'm sure now. And the ancient timelines all have to be looked at now in terms of the relationships of not just of what comes up out of the earth and volcanoes and stuff, but why they come up out of the earth. Are they purely out of the heat of the earth and gases, or are they electrical somehow? They certainly seem to be, what with all the lightning that comes with them, you know. So human history has been shaped by forces from the sky. Like, you know, people disdain astrology. But when astrology was born, it was because the people were wrestling with what they'd seen in the sky with these huge lightning bolts passing between planets. And the planets looked a lot larger because there was this weird convergence where, you know, they talk in the videos, they talk about being chaos. Well, really, I think it's just like a rhythmic chaos. It's like a certain point when they're coming together in harmonics, as a musician, it would mean that there's a certain oscillation going on every so many thousand years where they do come together and do their little exchange of components and maybe rearrange themselves again, and rearrange Earth again. Maybe toss some rocks back and forth. And then they go out back to their orbit, you know, and all the relations between what Titan is and how new it is, and what it looks like Venus and us, and who we are, and all this stuff is very interesting. I'm into planetology like I'm into everything, Greek philosophy, Egyptian philosophy, Chinese philosophy, wherever, you know, science, oceanography. So I am a young professor because my mind is the kind of guy who can't make it through a degree. But I have a lot of knowledge that I need to share with the world. And right now I'm a kind of like a fourfold vlogger. I'm doing proto-ancient history mixed now with the Velikovsky and Heraclitean stuff, but also in relation to things like the sea level record, what's down in the seas, what would be down there, and how it affected places that we do know about. No, the new places that are 10,000 years old. Who are the survivors of something much older? So the seas came up in 6,000. They came up in 12,800. They came up in 20,000. BC, all of these BC. So 2,000 years on that, 2,019 years on that. That's how long, 22,019 years ago, the seas came up. But before that, for a very long time, Polynesia had been land. The Caribbean had been land. I don't know if that's when the Pillars of Hercules opened. Maybe it was. I think earlier on that was more like 200,000, I think. But all of that had been land. And then when the seas came up each time, you know, 6,000 was by 200 meters, I thought. 60 meters, 200 meters. And then it sounds like 125 meters in 12,800. Somebody said 400 feet. And I haven't been able to find out what this other thing, this somebody's name line, that is the 12,800 line, which ties into other apocryphal history, which has long been regarded as popular fiction, and crazy man talk, which is the works of James Churchward on Mu and his theories on the geology of the Earth, which actually, when you start looking at them, they kind of jive with what Velikovsky has to say about this is where it gets really crazy. But, you know, they haven't been able to show that the interior of the sun is hot. It's not. Under electrical theory, it wouldn't be. It's like a shell, as are we. But, you know, when you have a ejection of plasma from the sun, the temperature inside the hole that it's coming out of, it's not ejecting anything from anything hot. It's just an electrical arc in the cosmos, is what you're seeing. It's all electrical arcs. Everything's electrical arcs. So I think the ice fields and the oceans, they're all electrical objects, right? As are we ourselves, you know. A lot of medicine, you know, a lot of what we could know about our own bodies, the electrics is now like, electrics I now I say is like, this is the wave of future in physics. But I'm a historian, you know. I'm a musician. I only want to play music, you know, but I understand all this other stuff. It's just everything is happening at once. So our music takes my mind off what this country is doing to the original people who lived here and were been robbed and raped. It's hard being a Canadian. It really is, you know. I talk about, you know, I'd like to go into exile just as a conscientious objector, but I need the health care that we don't have enough of. But, you know, a universal basic income would help here, which is what the people in France want. And they want, you know, an end to the banking scams, and real estate is slavery. Real estate is slavery because it makes people work for something they shouldn't have to pay so much for. All the real estate boom did was made the rich really, really, really rich, and put a lot of people on the street, and take money from the poor and make the young work instead of go to school. Look at European kids; they go to school all the time. Why? Because they don't have to work. Because they don't have to pay for school and the cost of living. Well, until France came along, the cost of living was better. Different countries have different situations, but I'm speaking Scandinavia. France is a different story. In France, the rich are too rich. Britain, the too rich are rich. The too rich are too rich. The city of London might as well be a separate country on its own. It may have to be, in fact. But the wrong people are in control of politics, and this means that the political systems are failing, which is why the fifth republic is going to fall. The Dominion of Canada is right now shaken to its own legal core by using military action somewhere that it has no right to even have authority in. And now the United Nations has told the BC government, you stop building Site C. Well, I bet you won't want to hear what the UN is going to say about the Wet'suwet'en arrests. Now, there's been but the Wet'suwet'en are holding their territory, but things are calming down for now. But the Prime Minister, I don't really comment because I didn't see the meeting today, but I did see rednecks mocking a Native woman for deriding them for ignoring Native rights just for their own jobs. And those guys, you know, their kids' futures, if they care about their kids' futures, they immediately go find work in another industry. And this is addressed to the Canadian Yellow Vests. You buddies, if you get like the French Yellow Vests and want democracy for everybody and good jobs for everyone, go learn another trade, and, you know, vote for parties that will fund you learning a new trade like solar or geothermal. Huge work in geothermal. You have more power under your feet in geothermal than you'll ever pull out in fossil fuels ever again. And you can use that technology to help your kids to build a world they can survive in, because what's coming, sirs, is very dangerous. And I'm speaking to all Canadians and all citizens of the world about this. Making sure this is recording. I'm looking, I can't even see my mom on my, it's just not the wrong shape for me to know that it's on or off. My eyes can't see much. I took my glasses off because I can't see with or without them, so I might as well see without them. Not see without them, I mean. Anyways, that all of ancient history is important. All of this study of science is important. For everybody to know everything, the education has to be free. To everyone. To every possible talented little kid, you know. And the whole idea that there is somebody inferior to you that could be yelled at and jeered at because they don't want to listen to you lie and pretend that the law doesn't apply because you want a pipeline so that you'll have work for the next so many years. And then what after that? What's after that pipeline, you know? What other mega project are you going to work on? You're only going to know how to build pipelines. You're only going to know how to build maybe refineries. You know how to fix cars and build houses, but you don't know how to build advanced technology. And we're being left in the dust. Take one look at China. We are being left in the dust technologically. Anybody who's been to Scandinavia or Germany knows that. We are being left in the dust technology. We're becoming a Rust Belt country like Russia is, and Ohio is, and Michigan. We're a Rust Belt country in the thin white line, the long thin white line I call the settlement belt, the Trans-Canada Highway belt, and the settled part of British Columbia. But even the settled parts of British Columbia, which are more northerly than other provinces, are still mostly native. The Caribou, the Amanika, the Nechako, the Skeena, the Bulkley, definitely the north, the northeast, And the reason that the seats in the interior go conservative, we call it liberal here, was social credit. It's the business party, and the rancher redneck hate the non-white people party, and hate the Indians party. Right? They don't put it outward, but that's what they are. They're the white Dixie party, right? That they get those seats, and they were the ones bitching about PR being unfair to them. Oh yeah, well they have guaranteed seats. If you find out about that, can't get into that right now. But the reason they own those seats is that the Kaska and the Danaza and the Sekani and the Kaska Dana and the Taltan and the Iskit and the Omni, all those, the various Dakek and the Giksan-Wet'suwet'en and the Chilcotin and the Shequatmik and all these nations that never signed treaties with the Crown won't vote in an election held by the Crown. Does that make any sense to you? It does make a hell of a lot of sense to me. I understand it completely. They don't vote, and as a result, those ridings are represented by the colonialist resource workers and realtors and political apparatchiks of the bureaucracy and the colonialist state. It's extracting resources, it's treating those people like crap, and in their childhood rape them. And then outlawed even more than 2 males meeting at once as a political meeting. It was the 1922 Potlatch Law, to prevent them from politically organizing and continue to go to Britain to demand settlement of claims, because Britain had walked away. The king had walked away from the obligations made by his mother. Well, as seen by the natives, by George III, by her whatever relation they were, George III and Victoria, but she really wanted them taken properly care of. And Governor Douglas tried. He got booted aside because that's exactly what he was doing. And the people who came in did exactly the opposite. It's a horrible story. The history of British Columbia is a horrible story. One of the darkest stories in the history of the British Empire, frankly. And now everybody goes on about Kenya, India, everything like that. No, if you really knew what happened here and what's happened since, what goes on to this day, like the arrests at the Maurice River Bridge near Houston, or Houston. I don't know how it's pronounced up there. It's in the Amanika, or Nechako rather. It's in the Nechako, which is on the way to the Bulkley, which is on the way to the Skeena along Highway 17, the Highway of Tears, where 1,700 Native women have died, and the Mounties, the organization that led the attack on them the other day and arrested them with the military in tow. But the Mounties are the as I said to somebody, it's like they're the white elephant in the pink tutu or the pink lingerie in the Michigan Murdered Indian Women's Inquiry. All the women are talking about how they are mistreated by the RCMP, and here they are being mistreated again, Mr. Trudeau, by the RCMP, that you just didn't extend that inquiry, and it's unclosed, it's unresolved and unredeemed, and there's still women still dying, and men too. And how many men are in prison? How many women are in prison? I'm speaking Native women. And our legal system is set up to jail them. Everybody knows that. That's why they wind up in there. It's the start of 1922 is before that too. We took their land, we took their souls. Oh my God, it's horrible. It's really horrible. I come from Indian country. It's hard, because my family is a colonialist family, resource extractionist family. I don't want to get into it, but I totally get it. I totally get it why they don't vote. I totally get it why they don't vote. I totally get it. So the point is, we have a parallel country that we're occupying. Do you understand me? I'm talking the geopolitics now. The political geography of this is in the geopolitics of it too. We're actually occupying an untreated belt of sovereign nations who have been occupied by the Crown illegally, or the authority claiming to be the Crown illegally, without having the mandate of the Crown to do it, since 1858. Well, and also versus the island in 1849, when the colony of Vancouver Island was chartered, same 1860, I guess. No, 1850, which is the colony of Queen Charlotte Islands, Stikine Territory, 1862. When, if Britain had any spine, they would have yelled, okay, let's deal with Alaska and take it. What we call Alaska now was Russian America. Fort Stikine, Fort Taku, Skagway. Fort Stikine is Wrangell. Anyways, the Tlingit would have had the same problems as the British and everybody else did. But the British Empire was never what it was pretended to be. It was always just a trade network to keep Britain rich. Well, now Britain's rich. Now the city's too rich. The rich are too rich. And the people of Britain are angry. They're angry at everybody, at their government, at the system. And the young people are angry at Brexit. And the Brexiteers are angry at everybody else. And here in Canada, you've got people on the prairies angry at Trudeau and angry at Indians for stopping the pipeline, angry at environmentalists, and the police are taking action against who? Against the natives whose land it is, and who have treaties promising them rights, who Canada does not honor. It's horrifying, historically. When I look at the history of legalities, the Wet'suwet'en country, the valley of the Bulkley, and also the western valley of the Chaco and its tributaries. The Chaco is that whole region north of Utsa Lake, and including Utsa Lake. Flooding of Utsa Lake is a whole story. The diversion of the Chaco River, the destruction of its salmon runs. But the wealth of the local people was based on the fish and the hunting and the lifestyle. And they also have ancient chieftaincies with raw laws and rules and formal territories and boundaries. All the things the whites claim they didn't have. But there are court rulings. There's a famous court ruling, Delgamuukw, and they didn't win the case. But the Delgamuukw ruling said, or maybe one of the appeals is what came up with this, that native oral knowledge and oral law is customary law in the same way that countryside law was in England and Scotland and Wales when British common law was evolved. It comes out of an ancient tradition and is now part of Canadian common law. And this is what Mr. Trudeau has done, is ignored that. He says, I don't care about what that court said. I'm sending in the troops. I'm sending in the military. I don't care if there's no treaties. I have a treaty with China to fulfill, which says that I must use all means necessary if a company has more than 1% Chinese ownership. Now that also means that it's exempt from labor and environmental standards. It's a complicated matter, but essentially Mr. Trudeau is denying reality. He's denying what will happen is all of these charges will be dismissed by the courts. How many $1 million did this operation cost? I've asked it several times. We won't be told. And the conservative media, they're not interested in talking about it at all because they're paid not to. They're going to get a few $100 million, billion. I don't know how much money that Morneau is giving them to keep the conservative press monopolies operating so that they can keep on lying and distorting the news, so that the government can keep on maintaining a corporate state and pretending it's a democracy when it's not. Now, Mr. Trudeau promised to reform democracy and never have another FPTP election again. So, Mr. Trudeau, you have to live up to that. So go ahead, do the elimination ballot. Go ahead, do it. Just do it. Referendum? Hell with a referendum. Nobody else has ever needed a referendum to do what they want in this country, unless you want to defer something and try and get it turned down like Mr. Horgan just did. Which he did. And now what do we got? We got the use of armed force against the building of an LNG pipeline where the Northern Gateway was already cancelled because of native opposition and the risk of violence. Well, again, the risk of violence, but by who? By the authorities is by who? The same as in France. The Yellow Vests are not violent. Same as the Wet'suwet'en aren't violent. They're holding their ground under their principles of law. And in the case of the Wet'suwet'en, they're ancient law. And the French under the principles of the Revolution of 1789, with peace added onto it and pacifism. So we have a pacifist resistance to corporate imperialism, corporate fascism, with the mounted police and the Canadian military sent in from other provinces into a place that the Crown has no right to even be there. And this is the Canada that I was raised in and was blind to until recently. And it's like ancient history, you're blind until you know too much. And then once you know too much, then you see it all. You see it all. And Canada is not a pretty sight. It really isn't. I mean, for how it is across the prairies, the racism in the prairies. The redneck belt in Canada is every bit as ugly as Trumpistan, you know, as the Midwest and all the redneck counties of the Dixie South and redneck California and wherever the rednecks are in the States. The Canadian redneck belt is every bit as ugly as the American Trumpies. They really are. They really are. The red states and that mentality, red state mentality, every bit as bad. And don't ever connect Canadians say, we think we're better than the Canadians. I'm sick of it. You're not. You're disgusting. Taunting and jeering at a Native woman, telling you that what you're standing up for is violating somebody's rights, violating the law, just so that you can have your own job. Well, I'll tell you what, the real yellow vests want everybody to have a decent income. They want everybody to have a direct vote. They want everybody, the direct vote would change laws, repeal laws, change the Constitution, and recall, basically fire politicians. And the Irish ones want judges, you know. You know, politicians, bureaucrats, I'm fine for that. If the people want to fire a bureaucrat that a politician appoints, fine, the people should be able to fire that bureaucrat by referendum. So what the French are doing is building a Swiss-style confederacy. And that's what the Canadian people need to do. British Columbians need to go to a Swiss-style confederacy. Myself, I said in my previous video that a confederation of sovereign nations in the unsurrendered nations. Let the unsurrendered nations fly a flag of unity, you know, fly a flag of unity and say, not just that we are sovereign, we do not recognize the government of Canada. We are on the map, these are our boundaries. And establish the boundaries between yourselves. Get it done and put yourselves on the map or areas where you're shared, whatever. Make the UN publish it. Make world publishing put you on the map, your sovereign countries. And I say how to accomplish this without military conflict with Canada is okay. Other than you can't do what you want, Canada, you know, but you know, this can be like Northern Ireland and Ireland are now that you cross back and forth. It doesn't matter. It's like an EU zone, like a Schengen zone. Doesn't have to be customs checkpoints or passports or anything like that, but you'd be signs saying you are entering the Wet'suwet'en Wet'suwet'en Confederacy. You are entering the Slatlam nation. If you're entering, you know, and so on through the list of nations, you know, whenever you enter. And the municipalities, the cities, and the white rural areas, you know, are they sovereign? The cities can be sovereign cantons like the Swiss cities are. And many of them have large native populations also, but also, you know, the mixed population of the settlers, the old-time settlers and those from elsewhere in Canada, the newcomers. I call everybody else the newcomers. If they came in 1910s, the Italians, Yugoslavs and stuff, you know, Russians, everybody, you know, everybody. They're not just visible minorities in BC, there's also audible minorities. And you know, this is a very polyglot population here. It always was. The gold rush here, you know, around Lillooet, there were Polish, Galicians, they were called, and Ukrainians, Galicians, they were called, Greeks, there were Italians, lots of them, lots of Germans, lots of Scandinavians of all kinds, more Norwegians than Danes and Swedes, though. Chinese, about 4 kinds of them. Various kinds of Americans. Some intelligent, educated ones, some of them jackboot Yahoo assholes. But most of those left and went back to the States and killed each other for the Civil War. They went and shoot up the Indian West, the Indian Wars in the States, whatever. They went back to Washington Territory or whatever, wherever they went, you know, but they didn't stick around. Anyways, I talk about BC history in my other videos, but yeah, I said I'm a multifold lecturer. You know, the history of British Columbia is where I come from, and I see its global role and how it fits into these interesting aspects of it that I'll be doing detailed videos on certain things if I can ever focus enough. And with maps and so on. And this thing about ancient history, I want to redo a lot of the things I just did, and I'll put maps in them and images of places. And some of my songs, I was listening to Cold Hard Land. Want to put images of both the Native struggle and the Doukhobor struggle and the other political persecutions in Canadian history, the Vancouver and Winnipeg general strikes, the Cold Hard Land we are, the long thin white line in the Great Red North, the land of the midnight sun, where the crown thinks it rules. But you know, Greenland and the Faroes are prosperous, self-governing countries within Denmark, and Copenhagen doesn't interfere with them the way Ottawa interferes in the affairs of British Columbia or Alberta, wherever. Ottawa is a foreign entity controlled by Quebec and Ontario, who sent conquest into the West. The occupying forces, currently the RCMP, were founded to subdue the West and bring the Indians to heel. It's an ugly story. They just have this great PR package with the funny red coats and the jodhpurs and the hats and the lances and the horses. And Nelson Eddy singing in the mountains. You know, it's all candy. It's like really, really bad cheesecake. It's like, you know, the maple syrup obsession. The maple syrup obsessed. You know, how many more hockey stories? How many, I won't get into the terrible thing that happened in Alberta, those young players, but people die in vans all the time and school buses all the time. But because they were hockey players, they're all national heroes. Unlike Terry Fox, who, died in the pursuit of a cure for cancer. We're such a different variety bunch of people. Rick Hansen, I could start naming out some of the great Canadians I think there. Chris Wiley, I think, is one of the greatest Canadians of all time. Brother, I salute you, my friend. I salute you, my friend. You're one of the reasons I'm speaking up and deciding to forget what might be said about me. That it's time for people who are alive and awake to speak up for what is right in this country. We need political reform in Canada. We don't need just electoral reform. We need citizens' assemblies in each province to determine the fate of our futures. And in some cases, it might mean joining the United States. I don't think they won't take New Brunswick, I don't think. Well, maybe Maine would take it, but it's too weak, the Maritimes, That's what the American State Department said, that they only wanted BC and Alberta. Okay, I dig that. Ottawa versus DC and some senators and some power there. Considering all our government is already American-owned anyway, and the reality, as I said to my friend Carla earlier, we were having coffee while waiting for something, and I said, considering the Americans already own most of the British Columbia infrastructure now, the railway, 3 railways they bought up that had been provincially owned, in other words, owned by the public, that were basically given to them in return for political donations. The ferry company, the museum, all these agencies and crown corporations are now operated by American companies or American management of some kind of outsourcing. We have PPPs, private-public partnerships, public-private, whatever the term is, PPPs. So you have Tech Cominco, which is CP Minerals, Canadian Pacific Minerals Division, Cominco, Columbia Mining Company. And then Tech bought them up, and Tech, I can't remember all the connections, all the mining. There's a big scandal with Tech right now that's kept out of the papers, because guess who is a major contributor? No owner has shares in, maybe even in the hedge fund, the New York hedge fund that controls the Vancouver papers. How did that happen? Though I'll talk about Mr. Harper and that meeting in New York. You remember that? Yeah, okay. The meeting in New York, when he didn't go to the UN, he met with Murdoch and someone else he got Sun Media license and got, I can't remember the guy's, Pelado in Quebec. It's the magnate, the media magnate there. That's the right-wing media magnate. He's the French Fox. No doubt he's cool with the BFM. I bet their coverage of the Gilets jaunes is disgusting. Right? So I don't know. Let's try to get my Canadian and other my Manitoban and Albertain friends, they clue into it, right? A couple of the Acadians, but most of the Quebecois there, I don't know what they're thinking about the Gilets jaunes, except all I know is Quebec is the one province that, where the kids do stand up for what they want. Quebecers will stand up for what they want, like the French did. But let the natives not be underestimated. These are people who thronged Ottawa in 30 below weather, 30,000 people. One guy walked from Ngava Bay across Quebec in the snow. These are not the people who go to the mall and send their kids to the hockey rink and get these huge paychecks and live in nice big warm houses and take holidays in the tropics or in the States, go shopping in the States for cheaper clothes. And don't mind if the colored people work in the service industry, so long as they don't get out of line and so long as they don't vote. As they do get into politics, we'll call them names. And the native people we don't want in politics, we want to call them a name. That thing that happened in Regina with the woman being jeered at by the pro-pipeline protesters was disgusting. Disgusting. As was the Prime Minister patronizing the woman who pointed out to him the illegality of what he was doing, and he thanked her for perspective and tried to spin it. He'd been spinning all afternoon. It's all the boy does. And if you behave like a boy, sir, you're a boy. Don't try and be your papa. If you'd been your papa, well, I would have been arrested by now, I think. I don't think your papa could have controlled the internet either, though. The internet's going to liberate us all. I'm into digital TNN, man. I hope everybody who's still listening gives that some thought. Everybody, we are history. Your parents' story is our history. And the ancient history that you don't know, and the political history of British Columbia and of Canada, and the actual structure of it, especially in relation to the natives, but also the reasons why they're importing immigrants, because they need something to pay for the pension plans. For all these people that are anti-immigrant, they're complaining about the very people who are being imported into the country to pay for their pension plans that they're so concerned about. The lack of education and civics in this country is atrocious. And one of the reasons why is when you're grade 8 or 9, you're streamed for industrial work, but also when you go into that line of work, you're streamed in the industrial wing of the shop for all the mentalities of the working class, which the industrialists cultivate, including hatred for minorities, hatred for hippies, hatred for environmentalists, hatred for anybody who tells you that your job is contaminating the world or hurting people or anything like that. Soldiers don't like being told that they kill people, but they do. I have friends that are soldiers of various kinds, mercs and soldiers, and I respect them all, and some of them are the finest people I know. But they've done things that I never could, never would. I was raised not to. Because this has to be a world of peace. And this is the message of the Gilets jaunes. This is the message of the Yellow Vest. And I want my Canadian Yellow Vest brothers, listen to me about the jobs that you should be learning. If you want good futures for your kids and good educations for them, you need to start developing a new path to technology for their future. Not letting the banks say, oh, we have all this stuff invested in these projects going, and all these guys who don't know how to do anything else. Well, no, there is all kinds of other things you can be doing that pay just the same. And if you develop it, and some of you have talent, you could go into those fields and develop everything from electric aviation to geoelectric power, like Tesla talked about, and all the technology that's there in the future to save the world. And the world needs saving. Your kids, you care about your kids. Then leave the oil monkey business behind and stop. Trudeau's an asshole, I agree. Trudeau's a total asshole, but so is she. And the NDP are no better. They're all just industrialists. They all just want to keep on. They don't care about the people who are poor. They don't care about the people who are old or disabled or like me, who are just not like you, and our society doesn't value the poets, the creators, the musicians, unless they go to the States or the UK and become famous, in which case we love them. Then we love them. Then we brag about them. But you know what? Jim Carrey left Canada because Hamilton would have squashed him. He said so himself. We'll all love our BC stars, right? But they can't comment on our politics. It's too dangerous in show business. That's why I'm not an actor. I'm glad I'm not. But I could never stick in a bottle like acting. I can't stay inside a role. I don't behave on set the right way they want you to. Be nice and humble. Whatever. Politics, Mike, they say, nobody's going to listen to you if you're angry, nobody and all this stuff and angry old white man. Well, somebody has to be angry. Somebody has to be angry because of all the disgusting stuff that goes on in this country, right? And people are just blasé about it. Do you care? I said to some people today that there's a war in this country. Sure, it's just a series of arrests, but it's basically a war. It's a war of troops from outside this province. Our CMP are mostly from outside this province. Near entirely, in fact. And the military, there are no troops here. There's militia here, and there's a few guys at the Esquimalt and the Comox, but we don't have military in BC. Camp Chilcotin, when they go there to train, but they're from somewhere else in the country. I don't know whether these guys came from Edmonton or Petawawa or one of the bases in the Maritimes. I don't know. But they're all from other parts of Canada, and they all hate, same as the Manitobans that came to work with my father on the Bridge River Project, when Dad told them, if you don't like natives, because you don't like natives, they're racist pricks. They're from the prairies. Manitobans, they're nice people, but they're they're whites, but they're racist pricks, right? And they were rude to the natives in the valley. And this is Mrs. Ullman, Teresa Ullman, when I was treating back there in '96. That what she told me. She smiled, and I remember Dad And she said he told all those guys that if they didn't want to work with natives, they could get on the next train and leave the valley. That's my father. He may have built the dam, and the dam was a lake, but he respected the native people. Anyways, it's partly, I guess, because of him that I respect them too, and my mom, you know, who worked at the native school, also at Shalath, but also at St. Michael's for a while until she had to leave. She couldn't stand how the girls were treated. She'd never talk about it. The dark secrets in our past in Canada, we can't talk about them. We won't talk about them. I had people coming down to me today for simply saying that, you know, the Lower Mainland had this unfriendly problem. Oh no, you can't say that. Like this immediately, you had this immediate dispute that and nothing was wrong. It's a standard story here, and a lot of people who move out on the Lower Mainland know what I'm talking about. There's a denial here that this isn't the best place in the world, and there's evils going on here. And it's all inevitable. They all say all this inevitably is kids having to work 2 jobs. All the kids at the Pizza Hut that I know and at the kiosk, do the phone kiosks in the mall, you know, they're having to work to keep the capitalists rich is what they're having to do. They're having to pay high tuition to keep the capitalists rich. They're having to pay high tuition to keep the bureaucrats rich. They're having to, you know, to keep the banks rolling in the huge pile of debt they have sunk into oil and gas. And this is why these guys in the prairies and around here in BC, who I know voted FPTP because they didn't want a green government. Brothers, you need to vote green, buddies. Vote for the Green Party. Side with the natives. Say, hey, look, we want free democracy for this country. We want to get rid of Parliament. Don't get rid of the courts. The courts are good. Just start appointing the judges better, and you can reach all judges too. Referendums. 1% of the population can launch a referendum in France. That's how the French want for their Citizens Initiative referendum. RIC is the initials in French. CIR in French, in English. Yeah, CIRs. So we have PPPs here. We have IPPs, you know, independent power producers. BC was privatized. The Americans own us. So we can't just repossess it all and say, well, this was all done illegally, because it was all done illegally. Like the Americans always do everything illegally. They bought our government by open bribery, and that government even went and changed the donation rules to allow them to donate even more. Holy cow. And you know what? The American progressive media won't report on this. Now, why is that? I don't know. Are they just blind? I don't know. I really don't understand. So, aside from that little side note, you know, that there's no way that we could repossess that without provoking the United States into taking action. And now, because of Mr. Harper, they have the perfect right to enter, send troops into Canada anytime they want for any reason. And the one interesting thing about that treaty is I bet it doesn't specify that they can't take action against Canadian troops. Because frankly, I'll tell you that the Americans don't want the TMX built. I'll tell you right now that they don't. They weren't impressed when Rachel Notley threatened to cut off the pipes to their own refineries. What a stupid thing for Rachel Notley to do. Everybody in Canada thinks they live in a bubble. They think, oh, it's so stupid. So do you think they didn't notice that? Come on now, right? So do you think they really want to pay higher rates so that this pipeline can be built to make China happy, for a free trade happy? That's not going to happen. China will never get, they have FIPA. Why do they need a free trade deal? No, they don't want a free trade deal. Mr. Trudeau wants one. Silly fool. Yeah, but he's a silly fool from the same pandering people who sold out the people of British Columbia by selling our real estate overseas as an export product. And I'm calling out, is it Sutton or Sussex Realty? Sutton Realty, I think it is. Oh, I don't want a lawsuit on that. I don't want to say. Anyway, so whoever it was, you know, the whole attitude of the real estate people here who sold your property to people in other countries and went and sold developments here overseas. Doesn't matter what's Chinese or where it was. You know, that we have so much foreign ownership here that made life impossible for everybody else. This was planned, and this was set out to be done even before they went for the Hong Kong immigration. This was planned in 81. I was told directly about it by somebody in the industry who worked for Sutton or Sussex, one of the two big ones. And the attitude is, you know, well, no, it's we got to have mega projects to keep the boys working and the politicians distracted, and let's cut down all the trees. It'll keep the guys in the mills, and then we won't have any more revolutions like we did in the 30s. And like I said, you know, we had revolutions here. It's not what my Cold Hard Land song. We had the Vancouver Winnipeg general strikes, all kinds of things, you know. the post-war veterans demonstrations, the occupation of Hotel Vancouver. You can't find photos of a lot of this, only a few. And you can't find footage of Oka, all of it. You won't be able to find footage of all the people talking back or the UTV. All of video history was wiped out, especially global, in 1993. The history that's not available, that edition of the special insert into the national edition of the Globe and Mail in 1983 for British Columbia, I can't find it, not easily. Everything's hidden. Everything your past is hidden from you. Now your ancient past is also hidden from you. But the reasons for that is also because we have these preconceptions that come out of the Bible and the Western perspective that they started with them, and British Columbians and Albertans all have their own perspective. And the Prime Minister has his own perspective that what he's doing is fine because this is Canada, and this is a Canada built on resource extraction. And at the farthest edge of the empire, we're still feeding the rest of the world our resources. It used to be Britain that ran us and ran goods through us and took the furs and whatever else, They didn't control the gold. They let the Americans come in and take it, stupid, silly fools. And whereas the Victorian gold rush got the empire out of debt after the Crimean War, right? The Australian gold rush. But the British Columbia gold rush, no, they let all the gold be taken. I can't believe that. Oh, the British were so asinine. So I don't know. It was Palmerston, I think, or Aberdeen, whoever was the foreign minister after 46, or at the time of the gold rush anyway. Not Linton. Anyway, they won't get into all that. I have to go study all that stuff. This was a video originally about, this is my other fields. You see, all my fields overlap. Ancient history and current history around here are all connected. Like my interest in volcanics and the human behavior and the geopolitical geography being affected by geohistory and interplanetary history. Yeah, well, there is a lot to astrology, apparently, if the planets are in that close. Zap and thunderbolts in heaven, you would affect your moods. We pass through Venus's tail. Venus still has a tail, apparently. We pass through it. She is still a comet. She is the comet that one of those trips past the planet, past us, raised the seas. And other things, electrical discharges for planets at times between the ice caps, static fields on the ice caps, the solid state properties of the planet, the solid state properties of the body, the solid state properties of the weather, of the ice and the water and the stone. This is our future, is understanding that technology. I'm getting cold. It's time to go in. But it's a fascinating world. But it's a dangerous time because there's so many ignorant, greedy people. And so by looking at ancient history, I'm trying to find the sources of the greed and understand it. And it's in a trauma, as one video I've watched commented, that the entire civilization of humanity after the great disasters of the different years I've mentioned in the ancient times, the pre-Egyptian times, and during Egyptian times, including Ahtmose, the Thira eruption, and also the Krakatoa eruption in 537 AD, and many others, not just the power of the earth, but the power of, yes, the stars on the earth, and on us, is probably a lot greater than we realize in our own history. And this is all coming to light now, and it's revealing also. Remember the stories about how there was electric, there was light, because how else did they paint inside the great tombs of Egypt? And and they had like chemical battery lights, but they also must have had electricity of some kind. Mirrors, they thought, but we don't have any mirrors kicking. And then about your planet. This gets back to the proto-history, the meta-history, whatever it is, proto-history, meta-history. When you learn about the planets being formed from a disk of dust, and that whole model of planetary formation, it doesn't exist in the cosmos. They have no evidence of it at all. So the Newtonian version of Einsteinian space, based on gravity, is entirely wrong. It should be based on. I'm taking my shoes off and I got to watch my new hip. It should be based on electricity. Electricity. The image of Tesla sitting in the middle of his laboratory. Yeah, and will stay with me for a long time. That he was sitting in the middle of the cosmos. He knew it. And yeah, I mean, the electricity between bodies, that tingle that you feel. It's all electric. Right? Anyway, so there's all kinds of things we can learn, but maybe there's technology we can build. Maybe the technologies that the guys on the prairies who are hating Native people and hating environmentalists and hating Pierre Trudeau's kid. The only reason Justin Trudeau is prime minister is because he was Pierre Trudeau's kid. He's not any other thing than that. He's a Whistler bouncer and party boy, would rather be skiing, and I don't know, got seduced by power and talked into it, you know, and Fidel had told him years ago on Dad's train, the funeral train, you guys go into politics. Sash is the more interesting guy. He stayed out of it. I guess there's this deal. Well, you're doing this, I won't do that. He's a journalist. I don't think he has another name right now. Maybe he's not even being a journalist right now. He's certainly not doing politics. You know. But we have a country being run by a corporate state using the power of the crown. But with the crown not having title. You know, this needs to be in the International Court of Justice. And I say again that the solution for British Columbians, all of us, including the non-natives, is to say we want sovereignty. We don't. It's time to say, we got, the terms of union were broken. The terms of union with Canada were never satisfied. The same as the British Columbia did not have the treaties, and Canada didn't get the treaties that they were supposed to get. So none of that's been resolved. The terms of union are broken. The unsurrendered nations are unsurrendered nations, and I say to them, confederate. British Columbia can hang on to the white cities if it wants, but I say to the remaining of the white, let's call it the white cities, but they're Sikh and Chinese and everything else, you know, and that you need to do what the Swiss do and get rid of the Parliament of British Columbia. Let Vancouver Island run Vancouver Island. And Vancouver, you know, the wealth of the North, a lot of it needs to stay in the wealth in the North, and the people who need to get it are the First Nations whose land it is. That white people can't see this in this country truly disturbs me, right? That people are so blind they don't care, or that they would jeer at them as they're doing online and in the newspaper comment sections, and also, you know, on the steps of the Regina legislature to a woman who was protesting back at them protesting. She's not Antifa. She's a woman. The woman who was arrested on the bridge, a woman. And our feminist prime minister, he talks about being, you know, it's reconciliation, but reconciliation is not done by arresting women, by a group arresting women using the power of a paramilitary who are at suspect in the murdered and missing Indian woman's inquiry. It's so perverse, it's nightmarish. Just nightmarish when you stop and look at that and realize what's going on. These are the people that won't help women when they come in and talk about being raped. They make fun of them, they're cruel to them. And they were just used for political expediency by the oil companies, using our puppet prime minister. I weep for Canada, I do. I weep for what I thought we were, you know, the Bobby Jimmy song, Canada, I remember all that. We thought we were the greatest country in the world. We were nice to our native people. No, we weren't. No, we weren't, and no, we aren't. We're awful. We're awful. And the native women who are dying, I won't get into all that. It's a horrible story. And the native men who are even more missing and murdered, we don't even know. Nobody talks about them. And yeah, the Idle No More had to do with native women being abused by native men, but the native men are being abused because their culture is broken and they all came from residential schools. Yeah, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. You know, I can't imagine growing up native. I have native friends, you know, and having gone through things in my own life, you know, but not like institutionalized. Like, well, yeah, kind of. A Milltown school for a kid like me was kind of being in a deculturalization zone myself. But, you know, the white privilege thing I did, you know, I have white skin. It didn't help me in life because of other things. But to see this going on from a young prime minister who got the youth vote saying he was, you know, would promise Gordon Downie he'd take care of the First Nations. Paternalistically, that's that line, paternalist. He's so paternalist, it's gross. Canada is a paternalist state that used armed armed conquest to take Western Canada from the people who wanted self-determination, which was Louis Riel's Northwest, and con British Columbia into it by a bunch of carpetbag capitalists who came up from California after the gold rush, sandbagged the governor. And then, you know, whatever, we wound up joining Canada and both losing Skagway and Ketchikan as well as completely violating the rights of the First Nations, taking their lives from them, their souls, their children, doing horrible things to them. Quite frankly, you gotta remember, it's not like an abstract thing. You did horrible things to them, or the government, the churches. These are not abstract things. These are like major liability damages in the hundreds of millions just in trees alone that came out of the Skeena and the Bulkley and the Nechako. I don't know what the figure is, but what percentage of it they got? Well, welfare payments, maybe. Maybe. And the diamond mine just up from Attawapiskat, one of the poorest countries in the poorest places in the country, is not in the news anymore because it's such an atrocious story they don't want to cover it. Canada has a lot of atrocities going on in broad daylight in the media. What are the media doing? The media are covering celebrities getting the Giller Prize or the Giller or whatever it is. You know, I don't know how it is. Silly fucking fake Oscars for Canadian Canlit. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh God. The fake America of Canadian media is frightening what it's become. Anyways, I could go on all night. I won't launch into the CBC and the media now. So this is the kind of thing that goes to go on with the unprofessor, which is me, Mike Clevin, sticking my neck out in public by talking about the things that nobody talks about in this country, and things about history that people go like, look, he's talking about weird planetary theories and stuff like, yeah, well, somebody has to. So that's my thing, is somebody has to. You know, somebody talks about the unspeakable, well, somebody has to. Somebody has to be angry, well, somebody has to. I know too many fields for my own to be able to explain. I know too much for my own good goddamn good, as I've been saying. Good goddamn good. I'm going to practice that one. And so I go by the Unprofessor Mike Clevin, Skookum1, Big Skookum. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you thought about anything in the comments. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Bye-bye.